looks at Gilded Age politics. Overspeculation, especially in the area of railroad expansion, led to a financial panic in 1893 when the stock markets crashed. Silver prices began falling, and people began exchanging their silver dollars for gold, which they were allowed to do thanks to the Sherman Silver Purchase Act that had been passed back in 1890 when the surplus was at its peak. Continued high spending, especially on veterans' benefits, and a lack of international trade due to high tariffs compounded the problem. Cleveland resisted any attempts at interference in the economy, believing in a largely hands-off or laissez-faire philosophy. Falling wheat prices, people withdrawing their money from banks, creating a credit crisis, and the Treasury running out of gold to exchange for notes and bonds added to the crisis. President Cleveland was even forced to borrow $65 million in gold from J.P. Morgan and the Rothschild banking family in England. In total, over 15,000 companies and 500 banks, many of them in the West, failed. An estimated 20% of the nation's workforce was unemployed as a result of the financial panic and depression. Some areas were particularly hard hit, with localized unemployment reaching as high as 43% in places like Michigan. That huge spike in unemployment, combined with the loss of life savings kept in failed banks, meant that even a once secure middle class could not meet their mortgage obligations. The deepening depression, which lasted a total of 4 years, significantly hurt the Democratic Party, which had controlled the Senate by a slim margin and the House by a very large margin. But 1894, in the midst of this, is an election year for Congress. And after those midterm elections, the Senate had picked up a slim Republican majority, and the House had swung overwhelmingly Republican. There had been 217 Democrats and 123 Republicans before the election, plus 16 others. After the election, there were 104 Democrats and 240 Republicans, plus 12 others. Populists even gained seats and began preparing for a significant challenge in the upcoming presidential election. But if you look at those numbers, that's more than a 100-seat switch in Congress. With the economy still a disaster, President Cleveland opted not to seek re-election in 1896, offering an opportunity for the Democrats to try and keep control of the White House. William Jennings Bryan, a former congressman, propelled himself into the Democratic nomination with his Cross of Gold speech, which called for a reform of the monetary system and attacked business leaders as the cause of the ongoing economic depression. He believed that bimetallism, or free silver, would bring economic prosperity, especially to farmers and labor interests. In effect, seizing on the main ideas that had been supported by the Populist Party just 4 years earlier, effectively killing their chances for an electoral victory. His Cross of Gold speech is considered one of the greatest political speeches in American history. In addition, he remains the youngest candidate ever nominated by a major party, as he was just 36 years old. His speech, he said, "I would be presumptuous indeed to present myself against the distinguished gentleman to whom you have listened, if this were a mere measuring of abilities. But this is not a contest between persons. The humblest citizen in all the land, when clad in the armor of a righteous cause, is stronger than all the hosts of error. I come to speak to you in defense of a cause as holy as the cause of liberty, the cause of humanity. We do not come as aggressors. Our war is not a war of conquest. We are fighting in the defense of our homes, our families, and posterity. We have petitioned, and our petitions have been scorned. We have entreated, and our entreaties have been disregarded. We have begged, and they have mocked when our calamity came. We beg no longer. We entreat no more. We petition no more. It is the issue of 1776 over again. Our ancestors, when but 3 million in number, had the courage to declare their political independence of every other nation. Shall we, their descendants, when we have grown to 70 million, declare that we are less independent than our forefathers? No, my friends, that will never be the verdict of our people. Therefore, we care not upon what lines the battle is fought. If they say bimetallism is good, but that we cannot have it until other nations help us, we reply that instead of having a gold standard because England has one, we will restore bimetallism and then let England have bimetallism because the United States has it. Having behind us the producing masses of this nation and the world, supported by the commercial interest, the laboring interest, and the toilers everywhere, we will answer their demand for a gold standard by saying to them, you shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. He got the Democratic Party nomination. The Republicans nominated William McKinley, a Civil War veteran, a former congressman, and the governor of Ohio. He had a lot of support from wealthy businessmen and bankers who were terrified of Bryan's populist rhetoric. As a result, McKinley's campaign manager, Mark Hanna, had little difficulty in raising tremendous amounts of money to finance the campaign. With Bryan's appeal more to farmers, seemingly at the expense of cities, he wasn't able to gain support in the areas with the fastest growing population. The popular vote was relatively close, 51 to 47%, but it was a landslide in the electoral vote, 271 to 176, and you only needed 224 to win.